Hey guys, today we're going to be taking a look at how you can create these stylized cartoonish shaders in Three.js. Now, before we get started, keep in mind that there are a ton of different art styles which you can go for, and also there are a ton of different techniques which you can go for. In this video, I'm going to try to show you one of the most simplest techniques available. So with that being said, let's get started. So here inside VS Code, I have this repo, and if I click on the src folder, app.js is where the main stuff happens. Now, you need to scroll down until you find this mesh setup part, which is the main part of our app. And here we create a geometry, a material, and we create a mesh and we add that mesh to the scene. In this case, we're creating a torus nut geometry. So you add that torus to the scene, and there's also this add model function, which we're going to use later. But yeah, if you run this with npm start, you're going to get this scene right here, a blue boring torus. Okay, so how can we make this look cool? Now I'm going to show you some reference images to really think about what we're dealing with today. If you look at these references, you can see all of them pretty much have a black outline around them. So every mesh has a black outline. And if you look into the shading of the mesh, the shading looks really flat and 2D looking. So that's the effect that we're kind of going for. So to implement these, I'm going to hop into Blender to show you how we can actually do this. So I'm going to go into Blender. I have a blank scene opened, and if I press Shift A, I can add a mesh. Let's add a monkey. I'm going to add some subdivisions to this monkey with Control 3. And that's going to subdivide this monkey 3 times. I can right click and press Shade Smooth to make this monkey smooth. And make sure you're in the Render View tab, which is the third ball from the top. And let's apply this modifier. So we can apply the subdivision modifier with click on the arrow and pressing apply. So okay, we have this monkey now. Let's go into the material properties tab and let's click on this plus icon twice. Now keep in mind that I'm using Blender only to show you what we're going to do in Three.js. We're not going to use any of the meshes here in Three.js. So click on the first one, click new, and we're going to have a principled BSDF. If we click on the second one, we can also click new, but this time we're going to switch the principled BSDF to an emission and change the color of this to black. Okay, now we have a black material with a white material. And let's click on this icon and go into the modifier tab. So you can click add modifier and add a solidify. So let's find it, solidify. And what this modifier does is that if you reduce the amount of thickness, it's actually gonna add thickness to the geometry. It's pretty cool. Now we're gonna implement this exact same functionality in a shader. So let's set the thickness here to 0.01 minus 0.01. And let's go into the normals, flip the normals, and go back into the materials section, and in the settings tab here, click on back face calling. That's really important. We're gonna go back here, and the reason I'm showing you all of this is because we're gonna do the exact same thing in Three.js. It's just a different way of showing you in Blender. So here on the materials section, we're gonna click on this material offset. And here, this is actually set to 0. If we go into this tab, the first material here is has an index of 0, and the second one has an index of 1. So let's go back here into the modifier tab and click on this icon to make this 1, and you can now see that we have a black outline. So we went through a couple of steps. The first one was creating a new material, making sure it is black, turning on back face calling, and adding a solidify to that geometry, and making sure the normals are flipped. And then after that, we have our nice render with a black outline. So let's implement the same thing in Three.js. So I'm going to go back into my scene, and I'm going to create a new function, call it solidify. So this is going to solidify the mesh that we have. So let's pass in mesh and let's call it here. So we're gonna call solidify mesh. Let's store what this returns in an outline variable, and this is gonna return a new mesh. So let's get started. So the first thing that we need is we need the geometry of this mesh. So let's call this geometry mesh.geometry, and we need a new material now. So let's create a new shader material. So material equals new 3.shader material. Here it is. And here we need to add a vertex shader and a fragment shader. I'm going to write them here because I'm going to show you a little trick you can use with shaders in JavaScript. So I'm going to add a GLSL function behind it to get syntax highlighting, and I'm going to write a quick little vertex shader here. So void main GL position is equals to projection matrix multiplied by model view matrix multiplied by vec4 of position and 1. And that's gonna be it. The fragment shader is also gonna be very simple. So fragment shader and GLSL, add a comment with Control-Shift-A, and come in here, and the fragment shader is a little bit simpler. So void main that GL frag color is going to be equals to vec4, and we're going to turn this to red, so a red color, just like that. And yeah, that's the shader. So yeah, let's test this. So in order to test this, we're gonna create a new mesh here. Const mesh equals, let's call this outline. Const outline equals new 3.mesh. Pass in the geometry, pass in the material, and add it to the scene. Very simple. Outline. Now, we're probably not going to see it because we have our Torus. Let's comment that out. And here, we're getting an error. Mesh is not defined. Why is that? All right, so here, we need to pass in Torus instead of mesh. Sorry. So, when you do that, you're going to get this red Torus nut. Which is what we want. But here, instead of only rendering this, we want the Torus to be rendered, but we want this to act as an outline. And this is going to intersect badly because there are right now on top of each other. So in order to fix this, we're going to do what we did in Blender. So let me fix this here and add in a new property, call it side. On the shader material, and you can set this to 3.backside. All right. With that, you're gonna fix the issue, but you're gonna not be able to see the mesh because the sizes are the same. So one thing you could do is you could take the scale of this and increase it. So set scalar, set it to 1.1. And this is gonna give you a red outline, and this works fine. But there's an actual problem with this approach, and that is you can actually see the thickness is different across the entire mesh. So the thickness here is less than the thickness here, and that's a huge problem. So in order to fix that, we're gonna do this entirely on the vertex shader. So come to this vertex shader, and we're gonna create a new position, and this is going to be position plus normal times the factor that we want. And this factor can be a constant like thickness. We're going to set it to 0.02 is fine. And let's use this JavaScript technique. You can add a $sign and brackets to use the JavaScript variable and do it like that. Just like that, you now have a new position with a displaced vertex. Now you need to use this. So instead of position, click change this to new position. All right. With that, you're gonna get a red outline, but this time this is much better because this is actually acting exactly like the solidify. It's adding an outline with the same thickness all around your object, which is fantastic. Let's change the color of this to black because that's what we want. And we are done with the outline. It's looking perfect. But as you can see, this is still not looking very good because we have a 3D shading on our object. In order to fix that, threejs provides a real nice class called Mesh Toon Material. And in order for this to work, if you just add it like this, it's going to be really bad. But you can add a gradient map. And this gradient map is going to be a texture that we're going to use today. So I'm just going to show you how you can set it up. So create a new texture, new 3.textureloader .load async. We need to use await now here. Make sure this is async. And load async, and we need to actually define a path now. So here at the top, I have this tune tone, which comes from images, textures, 5-tone, 4-tone, and 3-tone. You can use all of those. I'm going to use 3-tone, so that's going to be that. And now what we need to do is we need to go to texture here and load this. All right, we now have the texture loaded. What we need to do is we need to set the text gradient map to texture, but this is not going to work because we need to actually set a really important settings on this texture. So say texture min filter equals texture dot mag filter, and set this to 3 dot nearest filter. All right, this is a really important line, and with that you're gonna get this cartoonish effect, which works with lights and things like that. Now this is a really interesting helper class that threejs provides, but we're gonna go further than this. So what if you have a GLB model and you want to make that stylized and cartoonish? That's where we want to actually use this add model function. So let's comment this out, add Torus. Let's comment it out, and I'm going to show you what model we're going to use. So I'm going to go into the next tab. We're going to use this model from Sketchfab. The link of this will be in the description. This is such a beautiful model. All credit goes to this artist. Link, of course, in the description. Link to his page. And you need to download this model. So download the model, and one thing about this model is that it already looks cartoonish, but the method that I'm going to show you is also going to work for realistic textures. So with that, you can download it. I already have it downloaded here in the models folder. So we have the sword.glb, but we are not done yet. So you need to actually open up Blender, and let's delete Suzanne. And what you need to do is go into File, Import, and import this GLTF model because we're going to modify it. Okay, so with the model loaded, I'm going to go here into the Scene Collection tab. And here you actually need to open these drop downs until you get to this final mesh. Let's call this final mesh sword, just to keep in mind this exists. Now, what we want to do is we want to get rid of this weird parents that this model has. So click on X, and this is going to remove the parent. Select the parent, click on X. Do that a couple of times until you reach sword. So when you reach sword, you're going to only have this mesh. Now, we actually messed up the rotation of the mesh. So let's click on R, press -90, and press Y to make sure this rotates around the Y axis. All right, now it's going to be fixed. Press Ctrl A to apply all transforms. And with that, we're going to have our mesh. Let's export this as a GLTF. So go to Export, GLTF, and export it into our project file. All right, so now I have it exported into the sword GLB in the models folder. And here at the top, I import that. So import sword model from models sword.glb. But we need to actually load this. So this add model function does exactly that with some other things as well. One of the other things it does is that it also loads an HDRI and sets the model.material environment map to the cube render target dot texture. This is going to apply the HDRI basically. And we're going to have some nice HDRI lighting on our model. So click on this add model and uncomment it. Let's make sure we have enough space here. And you're going to get this, which is our model, but this doesn't actually look very good. We're going to make this cartoonish now. So what you would need to do is you need to go into Blender, and we need to select this object, go into the shading tab, and here is the interesting part of all of this. So zoom in on this node shader tab, and here you can see we have this base color node, which goes into the base color. And we have this specular tint node, which goes into the specular tint and emission. And we also have this extra node here, which I don't know why it exists, but okay. Now, what we need to do is we need to actually get rid of every single map besides base color. So we need to actually remove this specular tint, select it and press delete. And we're going to only now have our base color map. Now, you can see the base color map. If I select this, you can see it here. We have a nice texture here. What you would need to do is unpack this item. Now, in order to do that, you need to actually press Ctrl S and save this somewhere. Where I have this Blender file saved is actually here. In the models, I have this sword.blend. All right, so save it there and press unpack, click on the first item, and it's gonna unpack the textures for you. So here we have textures now. Open up this image, and this is actually the texture that we're gonna be modifying. So in order for this to work, you need to actually modify the texture. So let's copy this, in a way duplicate it, and let's paste it again. Let's rename this to image 2. It can be called anything. Let's call this image 1, the first one, just so we know what we're doing. And we're going to modify this image 2. Now, for this, you need a software called Krita. And you can download the software from the link in the description. It's free. You can download it and open this image 2 with Krita. All right, so here inside Krita, I have this image opened, which is our texture. And we need to apply a cartoonish filter to this now. So go into filter, go into start gimmick, and here you have several tabs here, but what we need is the artistic tab. So press on that and go into cartoon. When you select this, this is set to full, this preview type. I'm going to set it to forward horizontal because we can see the original texture and the cartoonish filter applied to it. So what we need to do now is we need to adjust these parameters however we like, and it's going to change the final look of things. I guess my settings are already pretty good because I've done this before. So you can copy my settings. So smoothness is set to 4.3. Sharpening is set to 135. Edge threshold is set to 16. Edge thickness is set to 0.5. Color strength is set to 1. And this final one is set to 51. And this is just a matter of preference. Whenever you're happy with your parameters, you can click OK. Let's go and apply that filter to your texture. Now, in Krita, when you press Ctrl S, it's going to save this exact same image at its place. So press Ctrl S and select the quality, make sure it's 100, and press OK. Now it's going to rewrite this part. Let me delete this extra file. That doesn't matter. So it's going to rewrite this image 2 file. And we have our image 2 now. Now in Blender, we need to actually use this second modified texture. So in order to do that, we're going to press on this open image button, which is in our base color node. Click on that and select image 2. When you do that, it's going to be applied now. And we have this cool cartoonish effect now, which is already visible in Blender, but export this GLB file again. So I'm going to export it, replace it with sword. Let's make sure we have everything selected, include selected objects, and export GLTF. All right. Now we're gonna have that load as our model, and if we check out our scene, you're gonna see that we have this nice shading now, which is actually only our base color. Now we can use the previous shader that we had, the previous solidify thing again, because it's a function that creates an outline. So here where it says model.material and map, we're gonna create a new line after that, and let's do solidify, and let's call that on the model, and it's gonna add a solidified version of the black outline to our model. And when our model loads, you can see we get this outline effect now. Now the outline effect works best if you make it really small, so we're gonna set this to 0.01, and with that you can wait for the model to load, and when it loads, here it is. We have the subtle outline, black outline effect. And this already looks pretty cool in my opinion. But we're gonna take this one step further. Now, Krita is an absolutely fantastic software. I use it a lot, but the cartoon filter of Photoshop is actually better. So Photoshop is, you need to pay for it. It's not free, but in my opinion, with the functionality it has, it's definitely worth it to purchase Photoshop. But okay, this is not sponsored or anything. This is just my preference. So we're gonna open up the same base texture with Photoshop this time. So click on image 1, copy, paste it again, and this is gonna be a duplicate of the first image again, and change this to image 3 now. Open this with Photoshop, and when you have this image opened in Photoshop, you can create a new layer with Ctrl+J, and select filter, go into filter gallery, and under the artistic tab you can select cutout, and it's going to give us this cutout effect. Now what we need to do is we need to modify the parameters here. So you can see we have number of levels. It's going to define how much cutout levels we have. So I'm going to set it to max, which is 8. Edge simplicity is actually a really important one. In my opinion, the simpler the edge, the better it actually looks. So you need to find a balance here. So I'm going to set mine to 6, and edge fidelity, in my opinion, needs to be set to the minimum value, so 1. Click on OK. And the image that you get is a simplified, super simplified version of the original texture, but this actually looks really nice on the model, and in my opinion, it's one of the best ways that you can make something stylized and cartoony. And okay, now we can export this. So go into File, Save As, and export this into our project file. Alright, so I'm back in Blender, and I can open File again. And this time press image3.png, which is the image I exported from Photoshop. Already you can see we get a pretty cool effect with this Photoshop filter. We get some artifacts with the flowers, but if you know what you're doing with Photoshop, you can actually fix that. But I'm not going to get into that in this video. So what we would need to do now is you need to export this again. So make sure to export this as sword. Replace the file, and back in our scene you can actually see that we have this nice texture now with the outline and everything. And yeah, that's the effect that I wanted to show you. You now know 3 different types of stylized shaders. So the first one is the shader that threejs uses, which is the cartoon material, mesh tune material. Which you can change the gradient map of. And now you also know how to apply a cartoon filter in Krita and also in Photoshop. So each one of those cartoon filters gives you a slightly different result. And I personally like the Photoshop one better. But yeah, it's just a matter of preference at this point. So that's gonna be it for this video, guys. I really hope you enjoyed this one. So yeah, that's gonna be it for this video. Leave a comment down below and let me know if you liked it or not. If you know any other techniques, share them with me in the comments, and I'll make sure to make a video about them in the future. And again, all the credit goes to the artist that actually created this model. I'm gonna put a link to his profile page in the description. And yeah, with that being said, you can watch 2 of my videos here on YouTube now if you want to. And with that, I'll see you guys next time.